Let's get together, talk about the movies that we saw this week. We'll have discussions, talk film news, we'll laugh a lot and act like geeks. Sometimes we'll have a guest or two, sometimes it's just the two of us. Let's crack some jokes and tell some folks to come along and hang with us. Mike and Mike go to the movies. Mike and Mike go to the movies. Yeah!
You have chosen wisely.
The quarantine rages on, but Mike and Mike have not gone to a movie in over a month now. The podcast continues anyway. My name is Mike Smith. Joining me, as always, is a man who asks that when I bring him out, can I introduce him as someone who keeps asking, dude, where's my car? Where's your car, dude?
Sweet.
Dude.
Sweet.
Dude.
Welcome to 2003's episode of Mike and
We
Mike
are
Go
traveling
Movies.
back in time. Your name is Mike DeCriscio, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'm Mike DeCriscio.
How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mike?
I'm great. So all the theme songs you're going to hear this episode were created by Kyle Cullen, who you can reach for your own theme songs now at kylespodcastthemes@gmail.com. Our logo designed by Jacob Honeycutt or @JacobHoney on Twitter. If you want to contact us, respond to something we did in the show, email us over at mikeandmikegotothemovies@gmail.com. So quarantine, it's week, I think this is our 6th quarantine bonus discussions episode that we're doing, Mike. But I believe it's actually technically like week 7 of quarantine or whatever in New York. And so yeah, we're going on like 2 months now of sheltering in place, staying at home, social distancing. What is your mental state like at this moment in time?
I mean, it's fine, you know? I had the realization that eventually I'm going to have to go back to work and like have a sleep schedule and shit. Cause I immediately, as soon as I got furloughed, I immediately reverted to my college sleep schedule where it's like, all right, playing video games and watching movies till like 3:30 in the morning, sleeping till noon. This is great. So let's just say it's gonna suck real bad when I have to start waking up at like 7 in the morning again and being a normal human.
7 a.m. I still wake up at 4:30 every morning to go to work.
Yeah, but you do morning stuff. It doesn't count. True. You're done by 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I guess that's also true. But yeah, so I do. I'm still going to work. And New York and Montana kind of in very different positions right now. Obviously, New York basically has more coronavirus cases than anywhere else in the world, which is insane and weird for me to just not be there when 95% of the people that I know are there and dealing with it.
Yeah.
I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was on a Zoom call with a lot of her like childhood friends. She grew up in like New Rochelle and Long Island and that kind of stuff. And so a lot of her friends are still over there. And she was telling me like, yeah, about half the people on that Zoom call had the coronavirus at some point over the last couple of months. But luckily they were very mild cases of that kind of thing. So they were able to kind of get over it pretty quick.
Wow.
But it's just it's one of those weird things where like at some point, like everybody we know, or not everybody we know, but like everybody's going to know at least some person who's been affected by this in some way, which is kind of nuts. Whereas in Montana, there's like 400 plus cases total right now. And the state is like gradually in the process of reopening stuff, which is, I guess, better than what Texas and Georgia are doing, which is just, it's a free for all. And it's like, everybody open, the beaches are, it's the mayor from Jaws being like, the beaches are open, everybody, and that kind of thing. And Montana's not exactly doing that. They're kind of doing a gradual thing where it's like they're letting businesses open up if they want to starting this week, and then starting next week bars and restaurants can open up again if they choose to, and there's like social distancing protocols they're all supposed to follow and that kind of thing. So we'll see what happens as a result of that. I mean, it seems like over the last like 2 weeks it's been pretty encouraging to see like, oh, there's only like 1 or 2 new cases a day here in Montana, and now that things are opening up again, it's going to be like, well, those numbers are probably going to spike. But probably not as bad as in Georgia and Texas. So there is that. At least we have that going on for us, I guess.
And through it all, we have movies, Mike.
Through it all, we have movies. Older movies, to be exact, because newer movies are not exactly coming out that frequently. There are, like, it is interesting to see what the studios have been doing with these new releases that they're supposed to be coming out with. Most of the big releases have been pushed back, delayed. A lot of them have been delayed by full years. We talked about Fast and Furious 9 a while back. That got delayed till 2021. Venom 2 just got delayed till June 2021. So there goes its Oscar chances. Which, by the way, the subtitle of Venom 2 is Let There Be Carnage, which I'm very excited about.
Jesus
What
Christ.
a great title for a movie. That's the kind of title they should add to every movie.
That's every movie's tagline.
Like Pride and Prejudice, Let There Be Carnage. I'd be very glad if they did that. But so a lot of the bigger movies are moving, and they're going to have to move because the only way they can recoup their budget is to be released in a theatrical space with a global box office. But then a lot of the smaller movies are getting pushed to VOD. I mean, Judd Apatow's new movie with Pete Davidson is going to be released on video on demand, which was supposed to be coming out in June. And there are other movies like Disney Plus is putting Artemis Fowl on their service, like the Artemis Fowl Disney movie that was supposed to be coming out in May, I think, is going to be released in like July on Disney Plus, for free for Disney Plus subscribers, which is pretty wild. And that's one that I think they're doing because they don't think that movie is going to do that well in the first place. They were like, hey, let's put it on Disney Plus. People are starved for content. They're going to watch it and all that stuff. Right. When they do release it, I think we should review it. Just throwing it out there.
I'm in.
We got to review a new movie at some point. Might as well be Artemis Fowl. And they're also putting like the new movie The Lovebirds on Netflix, which is the Kumail Nanjiani movie, which I'd been seeing trailers for. That was supposed to be in theaters and that kind of thing. So it's interesting to see some of those smaller movies kind of shift and push onto streaming services and video on demand platforms. And then the Oscars just today actually changed their rules for this year, where normally if you want to be nominated for Oscars, you got to do that 1 week qualifying theatrical run in LA where you got to play in a theater. But obviously you can't do that anymore for this year. So they set up a whole new thing where there's sort of an online Academy screening room that the movie has to be available there for like 30 days or whatever and that kind of thing. So this could like potentially really change the game in terms of Oscar consideration too, which is very down on the list of concerns about coronavirus right now, but it is notable.
Right.
It's an interesting thing if you're into movies and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they made such a big deal about rejecting movies and making movies have to be in theaters in previous years. And now they're like, well, I guess otherwise Bloodshot has to win an Oscar because it's the last movie that came out. So,
and we can't allow that. So,
right. So they changed the rules. And I mean, we were sort of talking off air earlier. There's a lot of stuff like, that and contactless delivery and a lot of weird stuff that we never really thought about that this shit better stick around once this ends because there's no going back. I don't want to talk to people anymore. Right. I don't want to have to give somebody dollars in exchange for stuff. Just leave it on my stick. These movies better be allowed to be considered for the Oscars after this.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But we've been watching movies at the home. We've been watching movies and TV and stuff like that. So we've been doing kind of just like quarantine discussions about, what we've been watching. We're starting to add some new stuff to the bonus episode rotation here. So we talked about this a little bit last week. And then our plan was to do this week, but we forgot to pick movies. So so now we're just doing normal discussions. And then so we're going to talk about the stuff we've been watching. And then afterwards, Mike and I have each picked 3 movies that we want to make the other one of us watch. And we're going to call the new segment Mike Makes Mike Watch. And so next week, we're just going to do like a half-hour review of whatever movie we pick. So I picked 3 movies that are available on Netflix, one of which is a movie that I think you haven't seen that I think you would really like. And so there is that. One of them would be, I think, a nostalgic favorite for me. I mean, I actually watched this a couple of months ago, which is why I also picked it, so I don't have to rewatch it because I've already rewatched it. And it's something that I think, you would probably enjoy, just getting a kick out of like the nostalgia factor for it if you've seen the movie before. And then the other one I picked because it's on Netflix and it's one of the most insane movies ever made. And and when I tell you what it is, you're going to be like, oh, come on. But yeah, so we're going to get to that too. And did you have any like kind of strategy for picking the movies, Mike, or did you just kind of randomly select a couple before we started recording?
Well, I had picked one, which the first one I had as soon as we had this idea, I was like, oh, this is going to be one because it was a semi-recent thing we've sort of talked about a little bit. Yeah, and I think it'd be fun to actually have a discussion about it. And then I realized I forgot to pick any other movies. And the other one is one that I also really want to watch. So I think it'd be fun to, and it's like a semi-new thing. So I think it'd be fun. Okay. And then another one is one that I watched a couple of months ago and I think you would really like.
Oh, okay.
And I know you haven't seen it, so it'd be fun
to
have some discussions.
Very cool. All right. So yeah, we're going to get into that after our actual discussions for the episode here. So let's get right into that. Mike, what you been watching lately?
Oh man, I watched a plethora of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're like you said, you're furloughed, you're not working, you're just playing video games, watching movies, basically for the foreseeable future, right? Yeah. So first up, I want to give a Community check-in. Finished season 3 on Community. Nice. The first couple episodes started a little rough. I think I mentioned last time where I wasn't quite so sure, but then like a couple episodes in,
leveled out. It's the same old Community that I love. And I think season 3 so far, I think maybe season 2 is the funniest throughout. But I think season 3 has the most like standout episodes. They start doing more gimmicky stuff, which I love.
There's a lot of ambitious stuff in season 3 where it really goes.
Yeah.
Some people thought it went off the rails at the time, but I'm like, man, there's so much good stuff. Virtual Systems Analysis is one of my favorites, where it's Abed in the Dreamatorium, and they're kind of like, it's just Abed and Annie kind of playing off each other, doing the Dreamatorium thing. That one's really fantastic.
Yeah, and this is the multiple timelines season.
Sure.
I think that's season 3 or 4, depending on which watch order you go with, I guess, according to you. And the DVDs, which I didn't know about. And I you mentioned like this, you were like, this is it, hard turn into sci-fi. And so that episode ends with the evil study group and the repercussions of the darkest timeline, where Jeff is missing an arm and Pierce is dead, I think, and all this crazy shit. I was like, okay, yes, I see where you would think that. But like one episode, okay. But then Evil Abed shows up a couple times. And then there's a couple other weird things where like they do the video game thing where like, they go into Pierce's inheritance, and there's a lot of episodes where like, and like you said, the Dreamatorium stuff. And I was like, holy shit, like I totally believe this. And the plot line with the plumbing school versus the air conditioner repair school that's so great for Troy. So this season has my favorite episodes, I guess, which is the Blanketsburg versus Pillowtown Civil War, and then the Ken Burns documentary version. Which that's my favorite episode so far in all of Community, just because the Ken Burns stuff is just spot on with Keith David's voiceover and everything.
Keith David, who also joins the cast later in the show, he's in season 6.
Which I expect them to reference that, but I don't know. Don't tell me, because I haven't seen season 6 yet.
I won't say anything. But so you just finished season 3? You haven't started season 4 yet?
No, because I finished season 3 either last night or the night before, and I was like, okay, this is a good enough stopping point. I don't want to keep going yet for the podcast. And the Law and Order episode, I think, which is the one I forgot the most, but ended up loving.
It's a great one,
because I totally forgot about that. So yeah, season 3 Community, 10 out of 10. Very excited. Nervous to have to suffer through season 4, but season 4 is when they go to 13 episodes a season. So at least it's super short. Yeah, it's only 13 episodes, and you can kind of power through it. I recently rewatched it because I rewatched the entire show not too long ago, and season 4, I think it starts off pretty rough. And, it's obviously off. Like, the entire season just feels off. And I think the first half especially is not great. I think there's this, especially like the story elements of the show that I was pretty attached to, that I feel like season 4 bungles pretty hard. And then I think it starts to improve about like halfway through season 4. Like around the halfway mark, it sort of starts to figure itself out. And it's not as good as the show it used to be, but it's like a functional version of the show. And then I think the finale is the worst episode of Community entirely. Wow. So there is that. Take that into account. But there's a couple of solid moments in season 4, a couple of new characters they introduce, which is solid. And there's one episode that Jim Rash actually writes, which is and he's an Oscar-winning screenwriter. That's right. He wrote The Descendants with George Clooney, which is just a weird thing. And I remember when he won an Oscar, I was so excited for it, because he was up there with the acceptance speech, and I don't think he even said anything in the speech. I think Nat Faxon, who he co-wrote the script with, he was the one talking, but Jim Rash made all the headlines the next day because he kind of made fun of Angelina Jolie's pose. Yeah, she had leg. Yeah, she had a dress that had her leg kind of bare, and he kind of put his leg out as if he was wearing the dress. It's pretty great. But yeah, he writes an episode in season 4 and stuff like that, and so that's a pretty decent episode, and that's around the time where the show kind of starts to find its groove. And then really the finale is I'm waiting for you. I'm really curious to see how you're going to react to season 4. Whether you think it's as bad of a drop in quality as a lot of fans think it is, or whether Dan Harmon or even the show thinks it is, because the show makes a lot of jokes about season 4 after season 4 happens. They always refer to season 4 as the gas leak year, where it's just it's a year where everybody acted a little bit off because there was a gas leak in the school, and that kind of thing, which was always a pretty good explanation for it. I was pretty happy with that, actually. And there's a couple of jokes throughout season 5 and 6 that reference that. But yeah, I'm really curious how you're going to react to season 4. And then once you get back to season 5, it's back to the good stuff. As soon as you watch the first episode, you're like, oh man, this is what was missing the entire time. Yeah, I think it is fun to draw the direct connection between season 3 of Community and Dan Harmon being fired, and Rick and Morty and the hard sci-fi turn stuff that Rick. I don't think it was right after that. I forget when Rick and Morty premiered in terms of Community continuity, but knowing that he went off and did that Harmontown tour and dealt with his demons or whatever the hell, and then which plugged that Harmontown documentary, which is pretty good. Yeah, it is. And then went off and made when Rick and Morty. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, actually, I can tell you the timeline because Rick and Morty premiered around the time Community season 5 also premiered. So it was season 4, like he got fired from Community, and Rick and Morty was basically his next project once he got fired. That was the thing he started developing. So he was working on that while season 4 was airing, and then he got rehired for Community. And so season 5 of Community premiered, and then like a couple weeks later, Rick and Morty premiered. And so it was a pretty glorious time where on Thursday nights, I was watching a new episode of Community, and on Sunday nights, I was watching a new episode of Rick and Morty, and it was like, back-to-back Harmon shows. It was pretty great for me specifically.
Nice. I'm glad you had fun.
Exactly. And that was one of those things where I was telling everybody, hey, you got to watch Rick and Morty. And I only had to do that for a couple of weeks. And then suddenly everybody was watching Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
It caught on so much faster than Community did. And in such a much bigger way than Community ever did while it was on TV. It's pretty nuts. But yeah, so that's Community season 3. And then I wanted to give a brief shout out also to, that was not a brief shout out to Community, by the way.
That was not brief at all.
Not in a little bit. I'll keep mine brief. The Sopranos season 2, my TV update. Still good. Still The Sopranos. I watched 3 more episodes since our last discussion of it. So I'm on season 2, episode 5. Just watched episode 4 right before this, where Tony and the gang go to Italy and hijinks ensue.
There you go.
That's how I'm going to describe every episode of Sopranos from now on. Tony and the gang have a problem, and hijinks ensue, which involve death.
That's right. It's just like It's Always Sunny.
Exactly.
The gang.
Yeah, exactly.
The gang doesn't murder.
Yep. And I'm loving the character. Like, I'm loving all the tertiary, the supporting characters in The Sopranos too. I'm really loving like Paulie Walnuts and Big Pussy and all those guys. They're great. Paulie had one of my favorite lines in the most recent episode, actually, where they're all trying to watch The Godfather on a bootleg DVD, which is a very Sopranos sentence. And they're all trying to watch The Godfather on a bootleg DVD, and it's not working. Like, they're banging the DVD player, and nothing's happening. And Paulie just says, "Hey, someone has to tell Paramount Pictures to get their shit together."
That's just you and your friends hanging out, Mike.
Yes, exactly. Except with less murder. But
yeah.
Or more murder for them, less murder for us. Anyway, The Sopranos season 2. It's still really good stuff. So yeah, that's my TV Sopranos check-in. What else you been watching, Mike?
I watched a couple crime films. Shocker, I know. The first of which was the Criterion Blu-ray of Rififi from 1955, and this is kind of like the heist film, I guess, is sort of what it's considered. And sure. I definitely, or at least the backbone of the heist genre. And yeah, I get it. This is a French movie directed by Jules Dassin. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not. But yeah, this is about a guy recently out of prison. He meets his old crew and he's trying to get out of the life, or he doesn't really, not sure what to do. And then he decides, okay, one last job, and we're gonna go for the big score. We're gonna rob this jewelry store, but we're not going for the windows and the cases. We're going for the safe. And it becomes just this kind of procedural heist film. It's really interesting to watch this and compare it to other movies, like more recent, like the Ocean's movies, which are so stylized and, it's quick editing and all this stuff. And the heist in this movie is a 45-minute, no dialogue, no score, just procedural heist.
Really?
And it's one of those things where I was watching it and like there's, the first act is the planning and we're kind of setting up the stuff, and then there's the second act is the heist, and it's this thing where like about 10 to 15 minutes into it, I had realized there was no dialogue and no score yet. Like, yeah, because like it's so engaging and it's so tense, and they have this thing like we talked about it on Goldblum with St. Ives, where it's the thing at the end where like the guy with the stopwatch and like it's timed to the 30 seconds, right. And it's timed to it's doing that, but there's no score or dialogue, so it's just really fucking intense. Yeah, and then there's this big explosive third act stuff with the double crosses and all that all that fun heist movie crime stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean Rififi, great. It makes a lot of sense. And then I happened to, one of my friends found this list from BFI that was like top 10 New York City noir movies or something like that. So we were like, hey, let's check out one of these. And we watched The Naked City, which I had seen before, which is another, I think, like noir classic kind of thing. And it's directed by Jules Dassin, the same guy. I didn't even realize. Like, I happened to be watching it 2 days after I watched Rififi. And
that's
wild.
Like,
some of this seems a little familiar, like just in terms of like, filmic devices and stuff. And I was like, pull up Wikipedia, and same guy. He ended up being blacklisted from America in the 40s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think after he made Naked City, I don't remember the exact timeline, but got blacklisted, went to France, made Rififi, which is pretty fucking cool. So there you go.
Wow.
Some two French noir stuff for you.
Cool. Yeah. Well, my the pairing that I have right here is a lot less classy than your pairing. I'm going to say that. I feel like in this time of great stress and uncertainty here in America, and across the world, it's nice to just kind of relax and like watch a dumb comedy. And,
oh, hell yeah.
And that's kind of what I did this past week. I watched a couple of movies, one of which is a movie that I hadn't really heard much about. I'd heard about it before, but had never really seen, and had heard it was not very good. It was one of those things. I have a coworker who lent me a couple of DVDs because we play a movie game on our radio show. My co-host on the show, and we play a movie game because I'm very good at guessing the year that movies came out. And this is a movie that stumped me because I just had not seen it and didn't really know that much about it. And it was one of his favorite movies, so he lent me this movie and a couple of other DVDs that like came out of that game that he realized I hadn't seen. And the movie is Dirty Work.
Show you a great batch of luxury automobiles, like this one-year-old Cadillac DeVille, priced right at $36,000, fully loaded, V8 engine, standard, shock-resistant CD player, standard.
Hey, the trunk looks kind of small there, Anton.
This is live. I'm on live TV. Trunk's fine. As you can see, friend, it's not small. It's a big trunk. I'll show you right here.
Whoa, you got a dead hooker in the trunk.
What? No, it can't be.
Yes, it was. It was a dead hooker.
It wasn't a dead hooker!
Pal, I know a dead hooker when I see one.
What's happening? Hey, folks, come on
Hey,
down.
hey, here's another dead hooker in this trunk.
What?
Oh, my goodness.
What are you doing?
I've never seen so many dead hookers in all my life.
Lord knows I have.
From 1998, starring Norm Macdonald and directed by Bob Saget.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and this movie, it's pretty good. It's
nice.
This is like right around the time that Norm Macdonald got fired from SNL. And so this was like his one big shot at trying to be a movie star kind of thing, in the vein of like his buddy Adam Sandler. He popped up in a couple of Adam Sandler movies and stuff like that. And they were on SNL together. And Dirty Work is a movie that stars Norm Macdonald and pairs him up with Artie Lang. And they're two guys who've been best friends all their lives. And they discover they have a talent for taking revenge on people. And so they end up creating a business that is just that. They people hire them to get revenge on other people. It's a very formulaic, pretty dumb movie, but I love Norm Macdonald. I think he's a great comedian, and it's really fun just to see him in a kind of leading role, and that's just the weird sardonic humor that he brings to it. Chevy Chase is in this movie also as the doctor who's treating Artie Lang's dad, who is going to die unless he gets a procedure done that costs $50,000 and all that stuff. So they got it's one of those things where it's it's a very simple plot that you've seen a million times before. There's a girl that Norm Macdonald's interested in, but she doesn't like him and that kind of thing, and he accidentally betrays her and he has to win her back and all that stuff. It's like every Adam Sandler movie from the 90s, just stars Norm Macdonald, who's a very different comedic presence than Adam Sandler is. And this movie got terrible reviews when it came out. It was supposed to be rated R, ended up being rated PG-13 by the studio. But a lot of stuff in the movie still works. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't. There's a lot of tasteless stuff in this movie, which you might expect from a comedy like this from the 90s. But overall, I really enjoyed it. A lot of fun cameos, too. Don Rickles pops up for a couple of scenes. John Goodman's in this movie. Who else? David Koechner pops up for one scene, too. And just, you got just the way Norm Macdonald delivers lines. It's so good. He's very sarcastic and very fun. Dirty Work from 1998. It feels like a kind of an underseen gem from the 90s that, gets overlooked a lot. So I wanted to throw that out there as a movie that I really enjoyed. And then I also watched a movie that, Mike, I'm going to tell you this. I had never seen this movie before.
Okay.
And I'm talking about Dude, Where's My Car?
What? How had you never seen Dude, Where's My Car?
I don't know how it happened. I had never seen Dude, Where's My Car, which came out in 2000. It's been 20 years. I had 20 years to catch up on Dude, Where's My Car.
I was pretty close with my 2003 guess.
You were pretty close. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the movie, because I think Dude, Where's My Car was a decent hit when it came out, but I think it really caught on cable and Comedy Central and stuff. So I feel like 2003 would have been prime Dude, Where's My Car time, And this movie is also, it's pretty funny. There's some good stuff in Dude, Where's My Car. There's a lot of stuff that does not work at all. Some really, I don't know how long it's been since you've seen Dude, Where's My Car.
Years, very long time.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, some transphobic humor and stuff that just really doesn't play very well. Otherwise, it's pretty fun. It's Ashton Kutcher, Sean William Scott. They lost his car. They got to find it. And it's one of the most insane. I feel like it's one of the most insane movies I've ever seen in my life. Just in terms of like where the plot of this movie goes, where it's like, yeah, so it's these two guys and they can't find their car, and it ends with, aliens and this gigantic demon woman who's trying to get this thing that might end the universe or that kind of thing. It's a pretty wild movie. Also, Jennifer Garner plays Ashton Kutcher's girlfriend in the movie.
That's right.
And it's like one of those, like, obviously her career had like just started. I don't think she was even on Alias yet. So it's so weird to watch this and be like, that's Jennifer Garner. Why is she doing this? Which is such a one-dimensional role. And like the movie ends on a joke where like, the aliens that they helped, give the guy, two necklaces to give to their girlfriends, and it makes their boobs grow bigger. And that's the end of the movie. Yeah. Like, and that's such a weird, it's so weird to see Jennifer Garner in a role like that, I guess. But yeah, it's dumb stoner comedy. I ate an edible while I watched it and had a good time. It's Do Where's My Car?
10 out of 10.
Yeah, maybe like a 7 out of 10. But yeah, Do Where's My Car? It's pretty solid.
Isn't there like I remember like one of the like Zoltan, like every time they say Zoltan, everyone has all the alien dudes like make that hand thing, right?
Yeah,
is that movie?
Yeah. Zoltan is like the alien or whatever. They're like alien worshippers. Hal Sparks is like the guy who runs the Zoltan group or whatever.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's Do Where's My Car? It's I might be the only person in 2020 who's watching Do Where's My Car. Who's to say?
For the very first time.
Yeah, it's
incredible.
It's weird to me, like, because this movie was everywhere when it came out too. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I've just known the title. I think I might have just written it off, around the time it came out. I mean, I was probably a little too young to watch it when it first came out. I was like 7. Right. And then I guess I never got around to catching it on cable. And then by the time I might have been interested in Do Where's My Car, I was probably already moving on to like, I'm going to watch Stanley Kubrick films. I'm not going to watch, this pithy Ashton Kutcher trash or whatever with Do Where's My Car. But so, yeah, I missed out. Pretty solid. It's not bad. It's not great. But it's not bad.
Problematic fave territory.
Yeah, there you go. There's Do Where's My Car and Dirty Work. Dirty Work's the better movie. I would say go check out Dirty Work if you haven't seen that. But anyway, so those are the kind of stoner comedies that I've been watching over the last week. What else have you been watching, Mike?
Incredible.
You got to class up this joint a little bit.
Well, my next one's not going to do it because you retreat into your 90s stoner comedy or return to the millennium stoner comedy home. I go to my 70s sleaze home.
Yeah, there you go.
And I finally was looking at those Arrow Giallo Blu-rays that I bought, and I was like, I got to start watching these. So I watched 1971's The Case of the Scorpion's Tail. Ooh, this is directed by Sergio Martino, who directed the last one I talked about, which was Suspicious Death of a Minor. It's, I think, about 10 years before Case of the Scorpion's Tail. Came out in 1971.
Yeah.
Suspicious Death of a Minor was sometime in the 80s. I forget the exact year. And man, I just love these movies. They're so much fun. And it's like the same, they're formulaic as hell. They're all the exact same thing. It's some guy with black gloves and like a straight razor is murdering people, and somebody gets wrapped up in the case, and it's like this weird twisty turny and you can't figure it out. And then there's a big reveal at the end. And the whole time there's bright colors and just flashy editing. And that's my favorite part. Like, this movie has so many, like, I don't think this is the right word, but like crash zooms, or where it's just like, wow, like the camera will like turn and smash like close up somebody's eyes like out of nowhere with like a musical sting. And it's just so funny. Like, I don't, like, for no reason. Like, it's just like guys walking down the street having a conversation, and then like we want to show they're being followed, and it's just like whoosh zoom, and it's so funny like to zoom in on the guy that's following them. And insane stories that you would never be able to figure out what the twist is going to be.
Sure.
Yeah, and the plot of this one is this woman who lives in London, and her husband is like this kind of jet-setting like businessman who's never home because he's a bad husband kind of guy. And he dies in a plane crash in Greece. And she has to go collect the insurance money for his life insurance policy, and then shenanigans ensue, just like on The Sopranos. And
hijinks,
people start dying. Hijinks ensue. People start dying, and then like other people think they have a claim to the money, and then it's like this whole web of deceit around this life insurance money. And like, that's fun. That's great. I'm in. Like,
Sure.
it's fun. It's just like beautiful European landscapes, pretty people. Then it's like these movies, a lot of them take place like in the fashion world. That's not quite what this one is, but it's like everyone's on vacation in Greece. So it's like that kind of luxury stuff. And people die and it's bloody and violent and like, it's fun. I don't know. This movie's fun. This one, I think I like this one a lot more than Suspicious Death of a Minor, which was also very good. But Suspicious Death of a Minor, because it's in the 80s and it's like, I think Sergio Martino, I was doing a little bit of research, like was kind of one of the forefront guys of Giallo in the early 70s. So he's Suspicious Death of a Minor is 10 years later. It's like a little bit more of a spoof and like kind of making fun of all the devices a little bit more. You know, if that makes sense. Like Suspicious Death of a Minor is more outright funny. And Case of the Scorpion's Tail is just fun. If that makes sense as a distinction.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm excited to check out some more of these Blu-rays when I get going.
Okay, cool. But does the main character find his car? Just out of curiosity.
You know what? It's never missing.
Okay. Oh, good for him. Yeah. All right. And I watched a movie this past week, Mike, that sort of fits in, not a giallo, it's more of a neo-noir, but just in terms of people looking for money. It's you know, there's check boxes. There's boxes to check. Yeah. You remember the movie Red Rock West that we watched way back in the day?
How could I forget?
That was a great movie starring Nicolas Cage. We watched it for our Nicolas Cage podcast back, probably like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, maybe even longer. And that was a really cool, like neo-noir thriller. And the director of that movie, a year after Red Rock West, also made another neo-noir thriller in a very similar vein. It was called The Last Seduction, which is available. Are you laughing at my Last Seduction voice?
That's a great title, first off.
Yes, it is. It's a perfect neo-noir title.
I took care of that for you. Thank you can also be very effective.
Could you leave? Please.
Well, I haven't finished charming you yet.
You haven't started.
Give me a chance.
Anyway, go find yourself a nice little cowgirl, make nice little cow babies, and leave me alone.
I'm hung like a horse. Think about it.
Let's see.
Excuse me?
Mr. Ed, let's see.
Look, I tried to be nice. I can see that's something you're
No,
not...
I'm trying. I can be very nice when I try. Sit down.
Maybe we just got off to a bad start. I know Ray's put plenty of people in a... What are you doing?
I believe what we're looking for is a certain horse-like quality.
You serious?
Yeah. I'll never buy anything sight unseen.
Uh-huh. That's a good policy.
How many lovers?
What, do I get extra credit points for experience?
How many lovers?
13, 12.
Any prostitutes?
No.
Any men?
No, man. Am I approved?
Medically. You have your own place?
Yes.
Is it a sty?
No, it's clean.
Do you have indoor plumbing?
Yes, I have indoor plumbing, I have electricity, and I have a name.
No names. Meet me outside.
It's available on HBO Go right now and HBO Now and stuff. I would recommend checking it out. This movie's awesome. It's so good. If you liked Red Rock West, I think you would absolutely like this movie. This stars Linda Fiorentino in the lead role. And Linda Fiorentino, if you don't remember the name, she was the woman in Men in Black who kind of joins the agency at the end. She was the lead in Kevin Smith's Dogma and stuff like that. It was really good in those movies. And for some reason, like her career just kind of petered out over the course of like the 2000s. I remember like she wasn't in Men in Black 2. And the whole plot of that movie was like, we got to get Tommy Lee Jones back and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even though the ending of Men in Black sets it up where like she's the new partner of Will Smith's character, which is very weird. But she is the lead in this movie, and she is incredible. Basically, the plot of The Last Seduction is that her husband, played by Bill Pullman, she and her husband have set up like a deal with these, drug dealers, and they give the drug dealers a bunch of drugs, and they get $1 million in a briefcase in return. And her husband returns home with the money, and he gets in the shower, and she takes the money and drives away. She runs off.
Wow.
And so she ends up they're in New York City, and she ends up in this kind of small town in upstate New York, and she's basically stuck there. She can't really go anywhere because she wants to divorce her husband, but he has like a legal claim to the money, but they don't want anybody to find out they have the money because they got it illegally in the first place. So they're basically trying to figure out how to divorce each other while also, he's trying to hunt her down, trying to figure out where she is. He's hired a private detective played by Bill Nunn, who was in Do the Right Thing, and he was in the Spider-Man movies. He was Robbie Robertson. Mm-hmm. And so she ends up in an affair with this guy in this small town in upstate New York, played by Peter Berg, which also of the Nicolas Cage podcast fame. He was in Never on Tuesday. Lest we forget. Wow. And so she ends up in this relationship with this guy, and she, ends up working in this town as part of an insurance agency, and she starts to get the idea to use Peter Berg to kill her husband, and run away with the money and that kind of thing. And she is also in the movie. Bill Pullman, Peter Berg, everybody's doing great work, and just the way the movie ends is so perfect, and it's just a perfect slice of stylish neo-noir thriller stuff. If you liked Red Rock West, The Last Seduction, absolutely 100% recommend. It's really good.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's on HBO right now. I mean, not the channel right now. I have no idea if it's airing right now, but the streaming service, HBO Go, it's there for the time being. But yeah, so that's The Last Seduction. Mike, what else have you been watching this week?
Wow, what a weird thing that we have two movies that directly connect back to our old Nicolas Cage podcast in a row. Whoa. I think this one was a Joel Schumacher joint, 8mm?
Yeah, that was
Schumacher?
Yeah, Joel Schumacher did 8mm, and also Trespass, lest we forget.
How could we ever forget?
The underrated Trespass, I would say. I mean, maybe perfectly rated, but I kind of liked it.
Was that Ben Mendelsohn in Trespass?
Yeah, Ben Mendelsohn playing the role that Nicolas Cage should have played. Yes, you are correct.
Yes. Got it. But yes, the movie I actually want to talk about is 1979's Hardcore, directed by Paul Schrader, starring George C. Scott. I have this Blu-ray from Indicator, and this movie looks great. And this is the story. I mean, it's so I think in 8mm, Nick Cage was a cop tracking down this snuff film, and in Hardcore, George C. Scott plays. It's very funny. He's this Midwestern. The first 10-15 minutes, this Christmas in the Midwest, and they're these devout, I think they're Calvinists or something like that. Some very conservative denomination of Christian, and the church is doing this trip to California on this mission thing, and his daughter is going, and then he gets a call a couple days later, his daughter is missing. She vanished. They went on this field trip to an amusement park, and she's been missing from the thing. So he goes out to California to try to find his daughter. And he hires a private detective played by Peter Boyle, which is pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then it just becomes this descent into the underground world of pornography and strip clubs and brothels and all this stuff. And it turns out his daughter, Peter Boyle, finds his daughter in one of these kind of 8-minute loop things that used to play in booths on 42nd Street at theaters and stuff like that. And they kind of have to dive into this world of hardcore porn. And it's really weird because it's the 70s. You might be more familiar with this because you watched Deuce and I didn't. But this kind of how it's just at this point in the mid 70s, it's just completely unregulated. It's not the porn industry as we think about it today with big conglomerate companies running things. It's just film guys that make these movies on the side. And it's really sleazy and dirty and gross. And George C. Scott, kind of his character, like I said, is this upright, conservative Midwestern guy. And he has to pretend to be a porn producer. He's this guy that came into money and he wants to make porn to try to get his daughter. Yeah, and it just becomes dirty and gross, and it's Paul Schrader, and he's angry, I guess, he always is, and it kind of, as he gets darker and darker and darker into this underground world, it becomes about snuff films, and there's this one guy that's making, if you want the most fucked up stuff, you got to talk to this guy, and this whole thing, and it's this weird fish out of water story with George C. Scott's character. So yeah, I mean, it's good. It's really cool. It's intense and not super uplifting in the way that maybe Dude, Where's My Car is, or one of these dumb stoner comedies. But definitely recommend Hardcore if you're interested. I feel like maybe Paul Schrader is a guy that I kind of want to watch his filmography in some fucked up way.
Sure. Yeah, no, he's got a lot of really interesting movies. A few of them are on the Criterion Channel, I believe, right now. So it's worth diving into that for sure. I think his movie, I think his remake of Cat People is actually on HBO Go right now too. So if you wanted to check that, I have not seen the remake. I've seen the original Cat People, which is also pretty good. But I've heard the Paul Schrader's remake is really good. That's where the David Bowie song comes from, Putting Out the Fire with Gasoline. Which was featured in Glorious Bastards. It's all circular. It all comes back around. There's another movie that featured Atomic Blonde had that song in the soundtrack too, and I remember hearing it and being like, "That song belongs to Glorious Bastards." And then I thought, wait, no, it belongs to Cat People, I guess originally. But I so associate it with Inglourious Basterds. It's like tough to remove it from my mind. But yeah, that movie sounds awesome. And speaking of The Deuce, also a great show, kind of looking into the same industry of that kind of thing. Ran for 3 seasons on HBO, ended kind of recently. It's really great. David Simon, who created it, just recently had a new miniseries in HBO called The Plot Against America, which just finished, and it was really terrific. If you want a mirror into the world that we're living in today, but filtered through like an alternate history of 1940s. Really interesting stuff. I talked about it a little bit when it first premiered on this podcast, like back in the day, but now it's officially over, and I can say it's a satisfying watch. 6 episodes, 6 hours of your time. It's worth it. It's really good. But all right, I have one more movie to talk about in my discussions here. I'm going back to the 50s with this one. I'm talking about a Howard Hawks musical that I watched on TCM. It is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which I had never seen before. And, I've seen a lot of the Marilyn Monroe movies, like the really big classic ones, 7 Year Itch, Some Like It Hot, and stuff like that. The Misfits, which I saw last year, maybe one of the best movies I've ever seen. That movie's incredible. It's a John Huston movie starring Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable. It's the last movie the two of them made before they died, and it's just incredible. Wow. It's really great. But Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is kind of like right around the time that Marilyn Monroe was a rising star. She's actually the second billed actress in the movie. It's her and Jane Russell as like the two leads, and they're just two women who kind of do a show together. They go on a cruise ship to Paris. Marilyn Monroe is about to marry this rich guy. Jane Russell's like somebody who just kind of likes shopping around, likes good looking guys, and the two of them are friends, and they sing songs together, and that's the movie. And it's it's a delight.
What a delight.
Yeah, it's a delightful time. It's really good. It's a lot of very funny moments. This is the movie that features the very iconic Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend sequence, which is what Marilyn Monroe sings towards the end of the movie. It has the red backdrop and the dress and everything. They were talking about this on TCM. They kind of had the intro thing, and they had Alicia Malone talking about it, and she was like, oh yeah, and that sequence has been recreated many times, actually most recently in the Birds of Prey movie that just came out. Harley Quinn has a similar sequence. I think she actually sings the exact song, but if not, it's definitely the same backdrop and dress and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. It's really good. There's a lot of very funny moments. There's it's just a good time. I really enjoyed watching this movie. And it's one of those things that's like there's stoner comedies and there's like musicals from the 40s and 50s that I'm like, man, these are good. These are just fun times. I just gotta sit back and relax and watch these movies. I recently watched On the Town also, which was I watched that a while back, but that was with Gene Kelly, Frank Sinatra, just 3 Navy guys hanging out in New York City for the day and singing songs. It's great. It's a good time. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953, directed by Howard Hawks. And Howard Hawks, one of the most prolific and pretty wild, incredible. Like if you look at his filmography, it's absolutely insane. Just the kind of genres that he mastered, from screwball comedies. He directed His Girl Friday to thrillers and neo noirs and all that stuff. But Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, I think, was his first attempt at a musical and was pretty successful. So yeah, that's the movie, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
I like it. Yeah, I feel like I've seen that movie before, but I haven't seen it in a long time. So it might have to be one of those I got to go back and revisit it things.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those ones that plays on TCM like relatively frequently. So if you have TCM, worth just popping on once in a while and checking it. What's the? We just talked about Remember My Name on the other podcast, which is why I'm thinking about TCM right now. Yeah, I think it pops up more frequently than that movie does. I'll say that.
That's good.
But all right, you have a couple more things on your list, right, Mike? That's the end of mine, but that's you a little bit more to talk about.
Yeah, I have a couple more things, and I'll try to. They kind of sort of all relate, so I'll try to smash them into one discussion.
Okay.
But the first thing I want to mention, talk about for this, is this documentary I heard about on Shockwaves, I think it was, which is a horror movie podcast, and Severin, which is a Blu-ray publisher,
right,
is putting out a giant box set of the films made by Al Adamson, who is a director I had never heard of before this discussion on Shockwaves. And included in that is a documentary called Blood and Flesh, The Real Life, REEL, because it's a fun pun, The Real Life and Ghastly Death of Al Adamson. And I don't know, have you ever heard of Al Adamson?
You know, the name rings a bell, but I don't think I've seen any of his movies.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of things. And it turns out he is like one of the most prolific drive-in movie director persons of all time.
Okay.
He made like 32 movies or something crazy like that in the 60s and 70s and stuff. He specialized, he was independent, like he would make these movies, you know, there's a quote, you know, talking head interview guy in the beginning that says like he would pull off special effects for $1 that would cost studios $20,000. Like, you know, he would just do shit like, yeah, throw it off the, like throw this dummy off the cliff, whatever. And like, you know, it would be like this shoestring budget kind of movies. And yeah, this documentary is just sort of about his life, and he ends up, they talk about it in the very beginning, he is murdered in real life in this kind of very horror movie fashion.
Wow.
So it's this weird thing where this guy that would make all these, you know, movies like the horror of blood monsters, or like, you know, stuff like that, like Hell's Bloody Satan, or like somebody read off a list of like 10 titles, and they all feature like blood as like the main title, and it's hilarious. And you know, he ends up dying in this kind of horrific way. And the story is like, if you're interested in these like kind of behind the scenes stories of movies in general, I think this is very fascinating, even if you're not specifically interested in these kind of drive-in movies. And you know, his father apparently was like one of the first independent guys. He was like a rodeo guy from, they use Australia and New Zealand interchangeably, which doesn't really make any sense, but in the 20s and 30s or something, and moved to America and started making films with like his rodeo buddies, and somehow managed to retain the rights in that era, which I don't understand how that was possible.
Right.
But just was this independent filmmaker in the 20s and 30s, and then his son was like, I'm going to do it too. So would feature his dad, and he would do a lot of stuff where he would get like John Carradine, which we talked about on Sentinel episode of Goldblum Pod.
Sure.
Guys like that, like in this, like people that like would normally be retired in the film industry and just be like, hey, come star in this movie. So he'd have like one big guy, and then like it'd just be all the rest of Al Adamson's friends. Like that's who would be in these movies. And there's pretty crazy. They talked about like his cinematographers would go on to be like Steven Spielberg's cinematographer. I forget his name, but you would definitely know it, I'm sure.
Janusz Kaminski, or a different one? Okay, he had a couple.
Vilmer or something, I think, or something. Whatever.
Vilmo Sigmund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And oh my God, Citizen Kane. How could I forget?
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, there we go. I'm a tired boy, I guess.
Okay.
Would go, like one of his guys would in between Orson Welles movies would come back and make Al Adamson movies, which is wild.
That's great.
Yeah, crazy shit like that. Yeah, and it's just really fascinating to hear about. You know, these guys. Russ Tamblyn starred in a lot of his movies, and they would just be like hanging out. Let's make this movie for $20,000. And one of the funniest things to me, they talk about like the era of the '60s drive-ins and how the major studios hadn't really figured them out yet. So people would buy movies, like these exhibitors would buy movies based solely on a poster, and like an ad, like a single ad, like a title and a poster. So they would just change the title of movies and sell it to them twice. Like they would just play the same, like, okay, oh yeah, a couple months later they would just change the title and put it out with the same stuff. And like they were talking about, sorry, I'm so long-winded about this, but there's one thing where they would make like, okay, we're going to make a Bond ripoff movie. So they're making a Bond ripoff movie. And then like they would talk to somebody and they'd be like, well, I don't know, kind of go-go dancers are pretty popular now. Add a plot about go-go dancers. So they would like just add in a new plot. And then they'd be like, well, I don't know, zombies are kind of big right now. Add in a zombie thing. And then like all of a sudden this movie would have 10 minutes of the original movie left, and it would just be all this other shit. Yeah, so I don't know. It's really, really fascinating look into this kind of like late 60s, 70s,
nice
independent horror world, which is really cool. So that's the Blood and Flesh, the real life and ghastly death of Al Adamson, which ties into Joe Bob Briggs, the host of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, is back on Shudder. Season 2 just started last week. So Drive-In, hey, there's a connection there.
Sure.
So yeah. So the first movie, they do double feature every Friday. First movie was Chopping Mall, which we stand here at Mike and Mike Go to the Movies.
Of course, we're a big proponent of the Chopping Mall
and
cut,
I didn't watch that episode, but yes, we're big proponents of the Chopping Mall cut, correct. And I didn't watch that episode because I've seen that movie a whole bunch and I was busy. And then I saw on Twitter it was Chopping Mall, and I was like, okay, I can afford to come back to that later. But the next one was called Blood-Sucking Freaks. And this is a movie that feels like Al Adamson would have made. And I watched that documentary earlier in the day.
Okay.
I watched Blood-Sucking Freaks, and I was very freaked out how that lined up. And this is the story of I was blood-sucking freaked out. And it's basically like a softcore fetish film for most of it. Where it's like this guy who's an artiste, he's misunderstood by the critics, and he's like he like kidnaps women. I mean, like, they don't know this. He kidnaps women and like kills them on stage as part of like a magic show. Like, I'm going to cut him in half, but like, oh, it's fake, wink, wink. But actually, he's cutting them in half. Sure. Like you do. And it just becomes like he kidnaps the critic, and he's it's like Hostel or like that level of like just torture porn kind of stuff. I can't think of any other examples besides Hostel off the top of my head right now. It's just sad. But yeah, that's Blood-Sucking Freaks. Very fucking weird. I guess I recommend it. I don't know if you're into watching that. Go ahead. Yeah, it's fun in a shock factor. Like, would be fun drinking with friends, freaking out about what you're watching, right? Kind of deal. And Joe Bob's always entertaining, so that's fun to watch that, where he's just making fun of these movies, or not really even making fun of them if you've watched those episodes. Yeah, so that's Joe Bob Briggs. That's Al Adamson. That's a lot of talking.
Yes, it is.
You're welcome.
That was more talking than you normally do at one long stretch of the podcast, I feel like.
I know. Well, I had a bunch of stuff I had to connect.
That's fair. Yeah, there's a lot of connections to make there. And the Al Adamson documentary, that's on Shudder right
now? No, sorry. That is available to rent on Amazon.
Okay.
On Prime.
Cool.
Yeah. Definitely really recommend that. The Joe Bob stuff, like, whatever.
Yeah, that's on Shudder. And there will be more Joe Bob stuff to be coming up over the next few weeks. But all right, so that wraps up our discussions, and we should just kind of briefly go through this because we want to just get out of here, I think, as quickly as possible at this point.
Yes.
All right, so we need to decide on a movie for next week. So our new segment, our new bonus episode content is going to be called Mike Makes Mike Watch. And basically the idea behind that is one of us makes the other one watch a movie. We'll also watch I'll also watch whatever movie I make you watch, or you'll also watch whatever movie you make me watch, unless it's like one movie I have on here I just watched a couple months ago, and I'm like pretty good on watching it again. And I think one of yours is also one that you just watched a couple months ago too. So we can probably be okay on those. But like, if it's been a long time since we've seen these movies, or maybe we haven't even seen these movies, period, then we'll rewatch it with each other. But all right, so we each picked 3 movies you want to try to make me watch, and I picked 3 movies I want to try to make you watch. All of mine are available on Netflix. Do you know where yours are available right now, Mike?
Yes. One, I got 2 Amazons and a Shudder.
Okay, cool. So why don't you run down your 3 first, and then I'll run down my 3, and we'll figure it out from there.
Okay, so I'm going to cheat and add a 4th one, and that's The Mummy, because you talked about it before, and I want to make you watch it. It's been a while. I haven't seen it in a couple weeks, so let's
yeah, for me, it's been probably, it might have been like before college that I watched The Mummy the last time. Like, I might have been in high school the last time I saw it. So it's been almost like 10 years since I've seen that movie. So that's a good choice. That's a good one right there. So maybe The Mummy could be the one. But all right, what are your other picks right here, Mike?
My other picks are The Descent, which I just watched a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And you hadn't seen it, so I was like, oh man, we got to talk about this movie. I think you'd really dig it. So that's available to stream for free on Prime on Amazon.
Yep.
The next one I want to watch is called Blood Quantum, which just dropped on Shudder.
Okay.
Which I randomly saw a couple things about it, and it's a brand new movie, a zombie movie that focuses on Indigenous and First Nations people. Like, it's about a zombie outbreak, but about Native Americans. So that could be really cool. I have no idea.
Okay, so you've never seen that?
Obviously. Yeah, it's a brand new, I think, Shudder original kind of deal.
Okay.
So that'd be fun for us to review a new movie, air quotes.
Yeah, fair enough.
It'd be something for us to check out. And then the next one is Opera by Dario Argento, which is a giallo movie that I really dug a couple of months ago, and I think you would really, really like that.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't seen enough Dario Argento movies. That's a good choice. Cool. And then I have all of mine are on Netflix. I have Good Time, which is directed by the Safdie brothers, the guys who just did Uncut Gems. And I don't believe you've ever seen this movie, right?
No, I've had that on my list for literally years.
That was my thought process. It's like, I'm pretty sure Mike hasn't seen this, and I've talked about it a bunch. It's not just a good time, it's a great time. And I feel like, it might be time for Mike to finally watch this movie. So I threw it on my list. I also have a Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
Hell yes.
All right, there you go. That's the one I just rewatched recently, like a couple of months ago, and that one I felt like, hey, that might be like a good nostalgia hit for Mike if he watched that movie when he was a kid.
Wow.
It was always my favorite Scooby-Doo movie when I was a kid. I wanted to throw that one out there. And then my other movie is maybe the most insane movie ever made. And they were recently, like, they talked about it in an aside on a blank check that I was listening to recently, and I was just like, man, it kind of made me reflect on how weird this movie is and how surreal of an experience it might be to go back and rewatch it. And I'm talking about B Movie from 2007.
Jesus Christ.
The Jerry Seinfeld DreamWorks movie where he plays a talking bee that falls in love with a human, and also it's a legal thriller about the estate of bees, and eventually it ends with the world possibly ending. That's a serious concern in the movie. It's a wild time. It's a weird movie. He's suing Ray Liotta in the movie. Do you remember that? Have you seen?
I don't remember.
Have you seen B Movie?
I think so, but I also don't know. It might be one of those things where I just think I have,
I saw B Movie in theaters, and actually I don't have it with me, but I do have a DVD of B Movie somewhere back in New York, because I was so invested in that movie being good because I was such a huge Seinfeld fan. Yeah. And I was like, this is the first thing Jerry Seinfeld's done since Seinfeld other than stand-up. This is a big deal. And then it was B Movie. It was... but it is just such a weird movie, and I thought that might be a fun one to watch. So to recap, mine are Good Time, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, and B Movie. And then, Mike, what were your? You had The Mummy, The Descent,
Blood Quantum, and Opera.
Blood Quantum and Opera. Okay, so of the three movies that I chose, what would be the one that you would want to watch the most?
Scooby-Doo. Are you kidding? Come on.
Fair enough. After I just pitched B Movie super hard, you'd still go Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island?
All I can think about is all those memes that were the B Movie, but every time they say B, it slows down, or they play the B Movie, and it's just all those things. That's all I can think of.
That's what we should, if we ended up doing B Movie, that's what we should do with the podcast, is every time we say B Movie, it slows down. And so it's a 15-hour podcast. Just an idea. But okay, so you're eliminating Good Time and B Movie, and you're going with Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island here. Yes. And then of yours, I would really like rewatching The Mummy, but I don't know if is it streaming anywhere at this moment? Do you know?
I don't. It had been on Netflix previously, but let me double check real quick while we're talking.
Yeah, I think it was on Netflix for a while.
Yeah, and it's also one of those movies that adds and comes back, and it doesn't stick around long.
Right.
In most places. It looks like it's available to rent on Amazon Prime right now.
Okay, so for $3 or whatever, I could rent The Mummy pretty easily. And then there's The Descent, Quantum Blood, which is a great title for a movie, and that's an unknown quantity. Neither of us have seen that. Yes. And then what was the last one again? It's Opera, Dario Argento, which
I believe is also available to rent on
Amazon.
Prime.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I think of those, because I would access this one the easiest, I would probably say The Descent. Okay. So that's on Amazon Prime, right? So I can easily watch that, stream it for free, and all that stuff. I think it's also on HBO Go right now too. Now that I'm thinking about it, so it's got a couple of places that I could stream that from. All right, so we're going head to head with Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island and The Descent, and I'm trying to figure out how we figure out what this should be. We both watched these movies pretty recently. I recently watched Scooby-Doo, and you recently watched The Descent. So maybe we can just do both.
I'm in.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so next week we'll be the only podcast ever, and possibly the only people ever, that will have a conversation that doubles Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island with Neil Marshall's very intense horror film, The Descent.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun one. So, all right, so that's what we're doing next week. We're reviewing both movies. Mike will watch Scooby-Doo, I will watch The Descent, and we will come back with our thoughts. All right, so I think that's gonna. I'm so delighted by how this has gone, Mike. You have no idea.
I hope they can all be like this.
I hope so too. All right. So Mike, where can we find you online this week?
You can find me at MD Filmblog on Twitter and Letterboxd.
And you can find me online at MSmithFilmblog on Twitter, Radio Mike Sandwich on Instagram, and Mike Smith Film on Letterboxd. Thanks for listening to Mike Might Go to the Movies. I'm Mike Smith. That's Mike DeCriscio. Don't forget to rate and review on an Apple Podcast or any other podcast app. If you want to contact us, hit us up at MikeandMikeGoToTheMovies@gmail.com or tweet at us at MikeandMikePod. And you can find the rest of our podcasts on Rapture Press alongside the Review Zoo, a podcast about all kinds of geek news and stuff. We'll be doing some more bonus episodes in the future. Next week, the big showdown between Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island and The Descent. In the meantime, our Jeff Goldblum podcast is weekly. We just released our episode on 1978's Remember My Name, and next week we'll be talking about Jeff Goldblum's first starring role in a musical disco comedy called Thank God It's Friday. I am pretty excited to dig into that one. And that's the end of this week's episode of Mike and Mike Go to the Movies. We'll see you on the other side.